Okay, we're gonna call this meeting to order. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Let's see. Dr. Joyner, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Can you hear me? Does it sound?
Do we all stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. And we'll move on to public participation. Dr. Joyner and Dr. White.
I have to find my timers. I know it's up here somewhere. Use my phone. Dr. White, you can call the first person up.
Our first speaker is D. Marshall Hill.
Good evening. I'm here to speak about the relevance of middle school and the growth of middle school students. I'm a veteran educator, been through it all, adjunct professor, everything. But the prevalent notion that middle school students will become future leaders and global citizens requires enriched instruction and a supportive public school environment. Low-performing middle schools also need access to enriched classes. Despite challenges such as limited teachers of color and language instructions, however, standardized testing often takes precedence, overlooking cultural relevance for students from diverse linguistic backgrounds. To counter this, we must emphasize perseverance and determination by providing meaningful, and I mean meaningful, enrichment classes for low-performing schools. Additionally, we should have creative enriching courses for low-performing schools regardless, and acknowledging the significance of global language and how important it is, especially to our 7th and 8th graders. And the 8th graders more so because they're going to high school. I know because of downsizing, upsizing, whatever you're sizing, the significance of kids being in low-performing schools really need to be addressed. And the whole point of middle schools in New Haven needs to be addressed. It's long overdue. Our middle school kids are mostly one floor, L-shaped. They can't grow like that. Even ergonomically, the desks, they can't even fit in, most of them. So we need to take a good look at offering enrichment courses that are relevant to our low-performing schools. It's unfortunate we lost our Spanish teacher. However, we need to be creative, and perhaps we have all these universities around here. We could get some volunteers to come in and do beautiful enrichment courses. We don't need to just dump our kids just in a class so the bodies will be someplace. They need enrichment. They need relevant enrichment, the low-performing schools, because they would never do those cuts at some of the other schools. There's within the inner city, there's a circle within that inner city. And in that circle, you have schools like Hill Central, Truman, but in the outer circle, you have the more higher performing schools. And I'm here to say that we need relevant enrichment courses for our low performing schools. Don't just dump them someplace just to be dumping so they'll have a body. I'm hoping that New Haven will address the need for middle schools. Perhaps we need to go back to 6-8 schools because our middle school kids are so deprived academically, socially, emotionally, and ergonomically. I mean, I have kids who are 6'2", 6'3", trying to sit in a small desk and learn.
Time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next, excuse me, our next speaker is Tom DeLucia.
Good evening. My name is Tom DeLucia. I'm the president of Local 287, Custodial Union. In 2020, I stood before the board imploring you not to privatize our last unionized supervisor position. At the end of that meeting, the board voted not to privatize the job and keep it a unionized city position. Fast forward 4 years later, and your city custodians are now entirely managed by a private company. It did not work then and has only worsened through the years. I've been a Board of Education employee for 25 years, and this by far is the worst the custodial department has ever been. The situation was never good, but the last 2 years have been truly deplorable. My members' morale is at an all-time low. I urge every board member to go to any school and go speak with one of your building managers about their experiences with our management company, and they'll echo what I'm saying here tonight. I am not here to vilify our private management company, but simply present the truth. And the truth is we're surrounded by excessive and unnecessary privatization. From our facilities department, custodial and trades management, and unbelievably, another layer of private management in our part-time cleaning company. Not to mention various vendors, landscaping, snow removal, plumbers, etc. Respectfully, most board members are only familiar with privatization. A few still remember the unique relationships school staff and principals had with our union supervisor in the past. They were able to call a supervisor and actually get a response and a solution to their problem. With the current companies, principals must jump through hoops, the same hoops as custodians, to get something done. Local 287 is calling on the board to rid New Haven, its school staff and students of these companies. Let our workers with essential experience in custodial and trade matters have room for advancement. Presently, there's no such opportunity for growth. Now is the time for change that our students and staff deserve. If brought back in-house, I assure you it will run more efficiently and be more cost-effective operation. We have nowhere to go but up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Leslie Blateau.
Good evening, everyone. I keep coming back to the words of Timothy Shriver, who spoke at our convocation and who highlighted the significant role that dignity must play in our work as a school community. Because we can all agree that our priority is to give New Haven Public School students a world-class education. And I know the individuals who are committed to this work right here, right now, are capable, motivated, and want to ensure that we continue to enact real solutions here in New Haven. And I also know that so many in our community, teachers, staff, students, caregivers, we've lost faith in the system. And to lose faith means you also lose some dignity because the system that exists to support schools has failed some of us. So we've lost faith and we've lost dignity because the systems in place aren't yet strong enough to meet the current needs of our students, our educators, and our community. Everyone has the right to learn and work in buildings that are safe, welcoming, and well-maintained. We've got Truman School staff here who are so committed to the work. And they and their students and all of us should breathe clean air. We should have access to drinking water. We should have access to private and well-stocked restrooms. We should not be so cold or so hot that we can't do the work. and the list goes on. But we're not there yet. And it's not a new problem. And year after year, we hear the responses related to capacity and funding, and we get it. The school funding system is broken, and it replicates the classism and racism that plagues our state and country. And our union and our union coalition is committed to advocating for an adjustment to the fiscal guardrails at the state level so that some of those billions of dollars that are trapped in a surplus and rainy day fund can make their way to New Haven. But our community, our union members, and our state elected officials who will ultimately make the decision to fully fund schools need reassurance from the Board of Education and from this system that those funds will be stewarded in responsible ways. I have faith, and I will continue to advocate for the funding, for the transparency, and for a commitment to have all voices at the table as we work on real solutions. And with that, I will close by saying, let's reassure our community by bringing back Local 287 union jobs to our city, Cross, Hillhouse, Career, and elsewhere. Let's settle the contract with the paras and our substitute teachers. Let's hear the voices of our teachers when they come here asking for simple things like light bulbs, safe classrooms, and the supplies that we need to do our jobs. Again, I believe in New Haven, so let's work together to make sure everyone in our community has a reason to do the same. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Ashley Stockton.
Good evening. Can you hear me? My name is Ashley Stockton. I'm a proud teacher at Truman School. I'm a proud parent at Wilbur Cross and at Sound School, and I'm a proud spouse at Metro. So I have personal firsthand experiences with several schools in the district currently. And I just wanted to bring up one point tonight. I'm disappointed the mayor's not here because this really is most appropriately directed to him. It's an issue that straddles various city departments. So I'm just going to ask President Rivera if you can ensure that this reaches him if he chooses to attend the meeting. A lot of people in this city spend a lot of years and a lot of energy advocating, fundraising, just championing a new playing field to be installed at Wilbur Cross. Our student athletes didn't have a sanctioned playing field. They couldn't even play at their own school. I could go on and on. I think we're all familiar with the history. After lots and lots of advocating and coalition building, the turf field was installed last year, and our Cross student athletes finally had a field of their own. If you have been to the Wilbur Cross field in the past couple months, you have seen that it's already coming apart. I'm here as a canary in the coal mine, if you will, before it's too late, before the field is closed, before our student athletes once again have no facility. Please maintain it. Please. I mean, there's grass growing between the track and the turf. And as a parent of 2 student athletes, I've traveled all over the country for tournaments. I've literally never seen that before. Never. Ever. I don't even know how it happens. Our coaches are distraught. Our athletes are distraught. And just given what we see at Bowen, that field was installed, I think we're going on 10 years now. 10 years ago, and there have been no problems. It's been maintained. Please, we have over 1,800 kids at Cross. Kids at every high school in this city play for Wilbur Cross athletic teams because their schools don't have their own teams. This one field is not even close to enough to service the number of kids that it services. And if it is not maintained like tomorrow, this time next year, it won't be sanctioned again for play. So please, before it's too late, before you say you didn't know, before maintenance gets away from us again, if the city, the Parks Department, the school, whoever is in charge of it, because it's always sort of a gray area, again, why it's best for the mayor. Thank you.
Thank you as well.
Our next speaker is Andre Bridget.
My name is Andre Bridget. And I'm here reading this letter on behalf of my significant other. My name is Andre Bridget, and I will be reading this letter on behalf of my significant other, Jasmine Joyner, who is standing with me tonight. We ask that the board allow 3 minutes time limited to become combined so that I can read this letter on behalf of our family. Good evening, members of the New Haven Board of Education. My name is Jasmine Joyner, and I am both concerned parent and an employee of New Haven Public Schools, where I uphold the district. I will uphold district policies and the restorative philosophy in my role at King Robinson School. Today, I am here to bring to your attention the alarming abuse of power by Ms. Mildred Blue, Principal of Engineering and Sciences, University Magnet School.
Madam Chair, point of order.
In here,
Dr.
Madam
Joyner?
Chair, point of order.
1 second, Dr. Joyner?
It is inappropriate in a public comment to name and large charges against an employee because the person is not there to defend himself, and that's not the purpose of the meeting. It is simply not in line. I certainly appreciate the concern, but there are other ways to address it.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Your point of order is well taken. Please proceed with your comments without naming anyone by name.
Or title.
and her failure to
Or the title. Thank you, Dr. Joyner.
the principal of ESOMS,
Let me
principal of ESOM.
let me see if Madam Chair, excuse me. Let me see if I can clear this matter up. You're certainly entitled to bring information to the board regarding how you perceive issues in a building. But it would be an unfair labor practice for us to do that to parents or to staff. Certainly it wouldn't be appropriate for teachers to come in and talk about a parent who seemingly can't control his or her kid. We want to respect your right to bring information to the board so that we can work on it. In this particular case, we've already gone too far. And what I would suggest you do is sit down with the superintendent, let her know what your concern is, and ask her to intervene on your behalf so that we can do it the right way.
So we've tried that. I've sent out emails and we've
Thank you,
tried that.
Dr. Joyner. You may proceed with your testimony, however, mention no names or titles. You may proceed without mentioning names or titles.
Okay, I have to add some time. Hold on. Okay, you have 2 minutes left.
I request a meeting with the principal at ESOM following my son's expulsions, not only to address what I saw as her best personal targeting him, but also to ensure that my daughters both who's still in there for 12th and 9th grade wouldn't have this issue for this upcoming school year. ESOMs. So recently my 2 daughters were suspended on the 3rd day of the school year. They was late going to the school, and she suspended them, saying 3 different issues: unauthorized absence, uses of cell phones, and before this incident, prior to this incident, we had an issue last year. We were supposed to meet before the school year started with Dr. White. He never reached out to me for this meeting. And it was
Madam
his,
Chair.
Again, I'm gonna ask you to please not mention staff names.
Madam Chair, in fairness to the parents, is there someone that can, on the staff, that can take them in a private room, hear what they have to say, and make a commitment to looking into the matter so that it can be resolved?
Dr. Negron, do we have a staff person here that can speak to the parents? Okay. It would, sure. Miss-
I will ask Ms. Red Hannons.
Ms. Camacho and Ms. Red Hannons are both volunteering to do this. If you can if you can go ahead and speak with Ms. Red Hannons, she will take your complaint and bring it up to Superintendent
sitting down?
Negron.
So go over there.
Yes.
And can we
meet
give,
privately. Or
and can we give them an answer within a reasonable time frame?
I don't want to speak to Dr. White. Thank you.
okay, and your next participant, Dr. Joyner?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Kamora Santiago.
Good evening, members of the New Haven Board of Education. My name is Kimora Santiago, and I'm a senior at ESUMS. I'm here today to ask for help in regarding something that happened at my school. I'm here with my family to speak about the recent incident that occurred on the third day of school, where both me and my sister were suspended, and I feel very mistreated. Yeah, very mistreated. And September 3rd, 2024, I arrived at ESUMS around 8 a.m. because I had missed my school bus. I went to the main office and received the pass by one of our administrators. After another administrator, I went to his classroom and dropped my work bag off because we hadn't received lockers yet. While I was walking up the stairs, another administrator team surrounded me and my sister, asking us to go to the main office, and informed us that we were being written up and suspended because we didn't have permission to go to put my work bag away, but we hadn't received lockers yet. That administrator was very rude and disrespectful to me in front of 5 other adults whom she loudly referred to as her witnesses. She then insisted on calling my mother and wrote me up 3 different times for 3 different things. The way that administrator spoke to me was very harsh and unwelcoming. It made me feel like I didn't belong at ESUMS, and that's not okay. I wasn't even given the opportunity to explain myself or clarify what had happened in the moment. I feel like me and my family have been unfairly targeted, despite my parents reaching out multiple times to the district. No one had responded or helped or scheduled a restorative meeting to address the outgoing concerns. Thank you for the time and listening to my story, and I sincerely hope that I can complete my senior year without facing unjust suspensions, and asking for this opportunity to finish my education and be treated fairly. Thank you.
Our next speaker is China Joyner. Okay. Our next speaker is Siobhan Harris.
Good evening, everyone. I'm here out of moral support, but I'm here just to let you guys know I am a graduate of the New Haven Board of Ed. I graduated from career in 2003. My experience in high school was the best ever. And to see how the children now don't have that same experience, or not experiencing the greatness of high school, is upsetting to me. Not just at their family, but all over. I tell all my cousins, even my kid as he grows up, you will love high school. High school is where you start to make relationships, and those relationships go further. But now, as things have transpired, I can't say that to them anymore, and it breaks my heart. So I'm just coming to let the board know that maybe they need to take a look into their high schools, who they have in charge. they have leading, who they have talking to the children, because everyone's not a person that can relate to the kids. People hold titles, but they're not able to do the jobs. So I'm just saying that. I'm a graduate of Career 2003. It was the best. But I would like the kids now to have the same experience I did. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Ife Waters.
Good evening. I'm addressing the issue concerning the recent suspensions of 2 students on the 3rd day. I want to emphasize, 3rd day of the 2024-2025 school year. My involvement in this matter stems from my role as an education advocate. The stated reasons for the suspension included violations of district and school policies, such as unauthorized cell phone usage, absence, and disorderly conduct. However, upon reviewing the full description, it appears that policy enforcement may overshadow the underlying issues at hand. Based on data from the Board of Education, it is worth noting that there has been a significant 252.9% increase in disciplinary actions at this particular school compared to the previous 2 years. This prompts a critical inquiry into whether the code of conduct is being effectively comprehended and adhered to. In a recorded meeting on June 7, 2024, the superintendent of school emphasized the need to bridge the communication gap, enhance district policies, and rebuild trust between parents and schools. This commitment raises the following question. While students and parents are subject to disciplinary actions for policy violations, is there a corresponding level of accountability when school officials fail to adhere to policies? Ensuring that the approach to addressing policy violation remains fair and transparent for all parties involved is crucial. Each one of you have a folder of the incident. I took it upon myself to give you a copy of the student handbook as well as the code of conduct. I do not believe that every school official in this district did their due diligence in reading them. If you have, you will not have the disciplinary incidents that you have. If you follow them, we will not be here. We will not have an issue between teachers and students and administrators, or teachers against administrator. We wouldn't have those issues. But because we are a district that what we do is just look at maybe what is sufficient or what we think is sufficient to that issue, we go on that. It's deeper than that. We are a dysfunctional district because nobody knows the rules. Nobody knows the policies. Nobody has any ideas of the state and federal regulation. How many times have I came up into this podium? How many years have I said the same thing over and over again? Policies, people. If we want some type of functionality in this district, we need to adhere to the rules and regulations. Why are we expecting something from others that we can't expect from ourselves? So you punish the parents, you punish the students, who punish the school officials?
Thank you for honoring the time frame.
Our next speaker is from the online audience, Carolyn Dorso-Smith.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my name is Carolyn Durso, and I am a 2nd grade teacher at Truman School. I'd like to add my voice to those people who are expressing concern about the safety and well-being of our students due to the recurring building issues at Truman School. Excuse me. We request attention and funding be allocated to deal with issues which are hindering our ability as teachers to properly provide the highest quality of instruction to our students. At the beginning of each school year for the past few years, our air conditioning system has been inefficient and has left some of our classrooms in temperatures in the high 80s and 90s, which is not conducive to teaching and learning. The water fountains in our rooms have been disconnected. The shades in most of our classroom are missing or broken, which means the sun is beating down on our students, adding to the extreme heat. In some classrooms, teachers have to move all their students to one side of the room to stay out of direct sunlight. Some years we've had to relocate students from overheated rooms to other areas of the school, causing disruption in instruction. Excuse me. Past and present principals, vice principals, and custodial staff have been receptive to our call for help, but in many cases, they have been dependent on others to solve problems and have been unable to get these issues addressed. We are asking for funding and support to address these issues so that all of us, Board of Ed, teachers, parents, everyone associated with the district, can continue to give Truman students the best education that we possibly can. Thank you.
Madam President, that concludes all raised hands.
Madam President, I'd like to thank the people that commented for being respectful of the rules as well as the time.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner and Dr. White. And we'll move on to our next item, which is the approval of the meeting minutes of our August 26th meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
I move that we approve the meeting minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mayor Elicker and Dr. Joyner. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote to approve the August 26th meeting minutes. Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough,
Yes.
Dr. Benitez is not here, Ms. Downer,
Yes.
and I am a yes as well, and so that meeting passes. Masergo. And our next item is our personnel report. Dr. Negron.
Thank you, Madam President. Before I request your approval for the personal report, I do want to highlight one of our retirements. And that is I want to recognize Marie Fapiano, kindergarten paraeducator, who retired on August 27th after serving 28 years to the school district. And with that, again, I am asking for the approval of the personal report.
Is there a motion, Mr. Wilcox?
I move we approve the action items of the superintendent's personnel report.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Dr. Joyner, any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote to approve the action items of the personnel report. Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Ms. Downer,
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough,
Yes.
Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
and I am a yes as well, and so that item passes. Congratulations to the retiree. We'll move on to the next item, finance and operations, Mr. Wilcox.
All right, thank you. So just before we get started, I've had a request for a couple items to be moved separately. Is there anything else anybody would like to be moved separately? So hearing none others, I will start with the first thing is because the Finance and Operations Committee asked for some clarifications in the memorandum of understanding with the city of New Haven regarding some salary reimbursement for some positions, and that wasn't able to be completed in time. I move that we table the MOU.
Is there a second?
Second.
I second.
Thank you, thank you. Ms. Downer beat you both to the punch. Thank you, Ms. Downer. Mr. Wilcox, any discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll vote to table that item. Mr. Wilcox?
Yes.
Ms. Downer?
Yes.
Dr. Joyner?
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough?
Yes.
Mayor Elicker?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well, and so that item passes.
All right, and second, I move that we approve contract 9.01, the award of contract with Tucker Mechanical. Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Dr. Yarborough, any discussion?
Madam Chair?
Ms. Downer?
Yes, I just have a quick question. Tucker Mechanical was this week and then there was another one. Is this the only contract that Tucker Mechanical has with us? Can someone answer that?
Board Member Downer, I would have to get information for my team to see if they have that. If not, I have to bring it back to you. Because I do not know offhand.
Jamar is here, Mr. Allen. Do you know?
Mr. Allen?
Do you have that information, Mr. Allen?
I need to know how many contracts is out there also for HVAC. And how many contracts does Tucker Mechanical have? I'm hearing overheated schools still. Just today. I need to know that information. It's a lot of money.
Mr. Eileen?
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. Jamar Aline, Executive Director of Facilities, ABM Management. Currently, we have 3 contracts for HVAC. Well, 2 of them and one being presented tonight, which would be the third. The first 2 are for air conditioning, one of them for repairs, the other one for maintenance. And this would be boiler repairs, which is the third one. All that went out for bid and were awarded to Tucker as the lowest bidder.
How long has Tucker been doing HVAC for the Board of Education?
I've only been here for about 1.5 years, so I can't answer how long they've been here in total.
Do we have anyone from facilities here?
Are they considered?
Mr.
I'm sorry.
No, I was just trying to
Mr.
see if
Clark, we're still
Mr.
So
trying with the Board of
what I want to remind the board is that these are all on-call contracts. So this is not a contract with the vendors in charge of service. This is when we request service, and depending on the budget and how much we can get done during that year, that's how the contracts are run. So this year, as I said during the last board meeting, was the first year I ordered this amount or requested this amount of money and separated the contracts from repairs and maintenance, and not just one contract, so that we can actually effectively do maintenance and repairs. Where previously we had one contract, which money pretty much was used for all repairs. We had no money left over for maintenance. So normally, at least in the past year that I've been here, we've never requested this amount or this robust of amount of money to support HVAC, so that we have more money to request them to do more repairs. But Tucker's not responsible for determining what repairs. We give them the work or request the work, and they perform the work.
Right. Does Tucker have 3 contracts, 300,000 each? So that means that Tucker may have $1 million, almost $1 million. So is that the case? Because Tucker is not a single sole source. So does Tucker have 3 contracts worth $360,000 on call? That's the question.
So I did answer that question. So they have 2 contracts currently, and the third one is in front of you. So currently they only have 2 because you haven't approved the third one yet. So the first 2 contracts, as I said, were for air conditioning, one for repairs, one for maintenance. They were not for $300,000 each. I don't recall exactly how much, but I think maybe in total $500,000 for those 2 services. And now what you have in front of you is $350,000 for boiler repairs for this fiscal year. So currently they have 2. The third is actually being requested now.
So I'm just wondering why we have just one contractor just receiving all the bids.
They went out to bid and they were awarded through public bid. We didn't award it through sole source. They won public bids on all 3.
Okay, we all know what the lowest bid comes in at, what it really cost us. And that's not towards you. It cost us a lot of money in change orders.
Ms. Downer, I answered your question. That would be a procurement question for purchasing. We've been following the purchasing guidelines.
So how do we get a situation where we can mitigate an actual real fix instead of a Band-Aid, instead of on-call? How do we move from that?
So that would be a broader question as to how we approach maintenance as a district, which I don't think is the question at hand. We can discuss that at another time, but I think we're just discussing the
Okay, but
contract
that's
right
the
now.
way we should go,
Understood.
because the Band-Aids is out of control.
Understood. And I do have some agreements with you there, but I don't think we're here to discuss that now.
Thank you, Mr. Eileen.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Madam
Any
Chair, I
further
have my
discussion
hand
on-
up.
Dr. Joyner?
Yeah, in an era of high tech, I don't understand why we can't create a database that has all of the vendors that we use for preventive maintenance as well as for ongoing services. I think if we had that, it would be a lot easier, and our meetings would proceed more efficiently. We need to know what is the prime mover for the problems in places like Truman and some of the other schools that were mentioned, and so that we can help the public understand that it is either because of underfunded, the projects we don't have enough money for preventive maintenance. We hire people and the work they do does not stand up. I'm at a loss to understand why there are problems at the field at Cross if it's a fairly new installation. And that has implications for the contracts that we engage in, whether or not we have warranties, whether or not the companies have a good track record of high quality performance. And I think it's worth investing in energy to, one, identify all of our vendors in different categories. HVAC is the one we're discussing now. To take a look at our contracts to see that there is some type of barrier in the contract to keep us from being taken advantage of. And to, at some point, decide whether it is in our best interest to bring as much of this work in-house as we can, so that the people that are responsible are directly reporting to us and being supervised by the superintendent and various department heads. I think also that would have implications for consolidating certain services, like landscaping, snow removal, and some of the work that some of the artisans do, so that we become one when it comes to high quality services in our school. I know it's going to take some time, but if we don't do it, we're gonna be at every meeting asking the same questions. And I would hope that the superintendent can identify people within the organization to give us a list of all the vendors, how long the contracts are, copies of the contract, whether or not there are warranties, and also to help us understand why after a year we're having problems at Wilbur Cross High School. And by the way, Bourne Field has problems as well, because I'm over there a lot and I'm in both places. If we can do something like that, then we'll be in a better position to explain to the public, to taxpayers, what the problems are. And they can separate out the problems that with the vendor, with our management, or simply because we don't have enough revenue. I was chair of the mayor's transition team, the previous mayor, and one of the major observations was that we had more buildings than we had preventative maintenance budget, a preventative maintenance budget for. And if you treated your car like we treat some of our buildings, you would be walking. So we really have a chance with the new superintendent and changes in the country in terms of privatization versus unionization, to try to identify what the problems are initially, and then to be able to ferret out those problems that are driven by revenue, as they all are, and those problems that are problematic because of management and preventative maintenance strategies. And we should also think about the policy implications of all of that. So please, let us get somebody working on this issue, both from the city side and from the board side, so we can find out exactly what our problems are, why we're having them, and what can be done to prevent them. It is really frustrating to have to hear this meeting after meeting and not do anything specifically about it, to at least investigate the magnitude of the problem, explain to the public what we're doing, and also explain to the public what we need to do more of in order to make a difference. Thank you, and I yield my time back to the chair.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Mr. Wilcox?
Yes, thank you. Just two things really quickly. One is I have had conversations with Ms. DeMayo about compiling a spreadsheet that would have all the vendors that we're currently using and the meeting date for finance and operations where it was considered, and then the board meeting where it was voted on, so that then people could go back and review all the meeting materials and make it easier to see exactly with whom we're contracting at any different points. And so we'll put that on the the discussion items for next Monday's meeting, just so that we can complete that, and that will be something that might make it more convenient for board members and the public and the press to be able to follow up on these. And I'm in agreement, and particularly around the funding issues that are connected to this. And just as a reminder to the board, our budget mitigation that we approved as part of our budget this year is cutting, I think, more than $670,000 out of this area where everybody's showing some of the frustrations with maintenance and so on. Is we're going to continue to hear about this, I'm afraid, if for no other reason, that we know we've cut in this area to meet our budget window that we have to fit into because of we're inadequately funded, particularly from the state level. So, but we will follow up on the list of vendors and the amounts and the meeting dates, et cetera, to make it easier for people to keep track of who we're working with. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Wilcox.
Mr. Wilcox.
Madam Chair.
Ms. Donna?
So I wanted to just say this, Cross High School, I was there, I reported it. It's my first time learning of the track. That school is overpopulated, which is great, but we can't service our athletes. It's very important to follow up on contracts when the craftsmanship is not up to par. We should have contracts where we can actually come back. That's one of the reasons why I'm in support of bringing our services back in-house, supporting our local 28017, supporting our local 3144. I'm 100% in agreement, and I won't stop. I've been looking for mitigation, but I guess if it's not happening, I guess I'll start it. But this is some serious, serious things we need to be talking about. We got a problem. It's bleeding. We haven't came up with anything to stop the bleeding. We could sit here, but we got to put things in action. I am in 100% support of bringing back our services. I've said it before. There's no way that someone should be in agreement, and I don't know who did it, and at this point, I don't care. No one should be in agreement with violating our labor policy. We got an obligation to this town. We got an obligation to our students. And I'm not just sitting here. The stuff I'm hearing, the stuff I see, it's got to stop. So I will come here. I will come here and talk about it. I will never act like it don't exist. You will never get that from me. Our support for Local 287, I support Local 287. Let's bring back our custodians. Let's bring back our grounds people. The amount of money that we have. And I don't know when this happened, but it really wasn't a good idea to do that, to privatize when you just did nothing but increase the amount of people we have on staff to just do mediocre work and to leave our schools in such disappear, where we have the floors aren't being washed or cleaned. And I've seen it. So we need to stop it. The bleeding has to stop. These are public funds. And I too would like to see the contract for the Hill House field. No, I'm sorry, for Crossfield. The other thing that's coming up that I asked to have tabled, I'll talk about that too. But I too would like to see how that contract was written. We got a brand new field and we got problems with grass coming out of it.
Ms. Downer, we're currently on item 9.01.
Which one?
Of the F and O items, 9.01.
Oh,
the
okay,
Tucker
so-
Mechanical, so please stay on.
No, I thought we had moved on. I'm sorry.
No, we haven't voted on it yet. That was the
Oh, we
discussion we were
haven't.
having.
Okay, then I'll keep talking after. Sorry, I'm just so passionate. Sorry.
Any further discussion on the F and O item 9.01? Seeing none, we'll vote to approve F and O item 9.01. Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough,
Yeah.
Ms. Downer,
No.
Dr. Joyner,
I'm gonna vote no as well. And I'm gonna vote no until we can get some answers.
Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
and I am a yes as well, and so that item passes. The next item, Mr. Wilcox,
Yes, I move that we approve change order 10.01, which is a change order with Milestone Construction Services.
I second.
thank you, Mr. Wilcox and Dr. Yarborough. Any discussion? Mr. Wilcox?
Yeah, I'll just point out that in addition to the materials that we heard in finance and operations, that we did ask for updated memos, which we received and are posted for this meeting, that explains this project more fully, and also the academic side as well as the facilities and fiscal side. I'll be voting in support of this tonight, and I'm hoping that we can have constructive criticism of this particular change order and not the entire facility's operations for the district. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. And just a clarification, this is a decrease in funding
Yes.
for those amounts. Okay.
Overall decrease in funding, yes.
An increase. Oh, okay. Thank you. Ms. Downer?
I can speak?
Yes.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. So again, we have Wilbur Cross not receiving the mechanical, the manufacturer room. I guess it's gonna be delayed. I'm not really sure. But this is a service that's actually needed. I know that match was going to be, in its place. But where we have a school, I wonder if match can actually handle this, handle the number of students that would be interested in this program. It's just really disappointing to see projects be rescheduled or taken off the table, especially when there is a need in that school as well as Hill House. It is disheartening because I'm not sure if it's the same milestone was the same for both. Right, so then that's an opportunity again, that where we see this type of, change orders where the price goes up on the material. And then, then we have to face that like a year later. It's like, why couldn't we use another contractor to see that this is actually happening? Or I just didn't hear those questions in the FNL. Like, why can't we use another contractor to assure that, the services are, being received both at Hill House and Cross at the same time? It's bad enough they don't even have a pool. So now we're taking a manufacturer room and using a program, which they're probably not going to get the same experience outside. So I don't know if that was a consideration to use another contractor, because Milestone is not a sole source.
President Rivera, may I clarify, please?
Yes.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you.
So to bring clarity, years prior to my arrival, there were plans to build a manufacturing lab over at both Wilbur Cross and Hill House that would be able to support all the students who we have now at Wilbur Cross and Hill House that are part of the manufacturing pathway. An assessment was done over at Cross, which surfaced two different challenges. One is that when those plans were made, and again, I want to re-emphasize here, I was not here when it happened, but this is what I learned when investigating this matter. It would have meant that we would have had to displace the automotive lab that
Right.
currently exists at Wilbur Cross. Because in order to build the lab at Cross, it would have required more space to be able to do that across. Another thing that did not happen is that the funding that the district had secured to be able to build the labs, when they did the scope, didn't fully include everything that was going to be necessary to do both labs. So we had to reassess, make decisions. So the decision that we have arrived is that number one, we do not want our students to be impacted. By that meaning, we still want all of our students, both at Wilbur Cross and at Hill House, to continue to have the experience of the manufacturing pathway. So all of that will continue to happen. It means that for this year, because our labs are still not built, will be that we have secured the partnership with Match, so the kids can go over to Match, get the hands-on that they would have been able to get through the lab if the lab had been open. But again, in either case, we wouldn't be able to have the lab open yet. So kids this year are going into Match, one, to get the hands-on experiences, and also for our own staff to be able to get the learning that they need to, because we want to bring this in-house. We don't want to be paying for our kids to go out. The idea is that our own teachers can provide the hands-on experiences. So this is the benefit of the kids going to Match this year. In the meantime, the lab will proceed to be built at Hill House. So instead of having two labs, we'll have one, so that we don't have to displace our automotive students. One of the programs that's very robust and the kids enjoy. We don't want to have an impact to that program. So we're going to still build the lab over at Hill House. And then we have a solution for this year. We have to continue then to explore what happens the year after, so that the kids across can continue to get the hands-on inside of our own lab, even if that means that it's at Hill House. So again, we're still building a lab. The kids will still have hands-on. This has nothing to do with the builder. It has to do with the fact that years past, right? All these things were not considered.
Madam Chair,
Dr. Joyner,
what Dr.
Point of
Negrona
order.
said.
Point of order.
Mr. Wilcox?
I believe Ms. Downer still had the floor because she was getting an answer to a question and so that
Your point of order is well taken. Go ahead, Ms. Downer, and then Dr. Joyner.
Okay, so basically, Dr. Negron, are you saying that it was human error not to include the automotive lab? Because when you establish a project, you need to establish the project need, and then you establish the scope of the work, and then you establish the major materials needed and the financials based on that, whether the schedule is going to be, they start this year, next year. So are you saying that it was human error that they forgot to include the automotive lab? Because that sounds to me like someone didn't consider what the risks were. So sorry?
There's a simple way to clear this up. If we can stick to the item that we're voting on.
Hold on, Dr. Joyner.
That's part of the item. Point of order, Dr. Joyner.
Oh, go ahead.
Downer.
So that's,
Yes.
I think you really have to scope it out. You do have to do an analysis, and it may take some months before you can determine what is affected, what do we keep, and that's with every project. But are you saying that that wasn't done in the beginning?
To answer your question, the answer to your question is, when you said, did they forget to scope it out? The answer to that question is no. The idea here was that there was this great vision to build 2 manufacturing labs. Beautiful vision, right? Went out to try to seek funding to be able to build 2 manufacturing labs, right? Great idea, great vision for our kids. When then it gets down to scoping out, how are we going to build 2 labs? Everything is fine at Hill House, we can build it, we have the space, great. When it comes time to then look across, in order to build it and do it, it means you are jeopardizing the automotive lab, because it would mean that you have to displace them. So instead of displacing them, right, we don't want to displace a program, long-standing program that has been growing great. We needed to then shift to say, we're gonna have to settle with 1 lab instead of 2 and figure out how do we make it work so that all students have access to this lab that we are going to build. So I just want, does
So-
that clarify the question?
Yeah, is
Okay.
the automative gonna be included with the manufacturer?
No, that had nothing to do, the automotive lab that exists there now had nothing to do with this plan for the manufacturing lab. It's just that it's in a space right next to where this manufacturing lab was supposed to be built.
Okay, I'm just wondering why it wasn't scoped out with the automotive lab. And I mean, it really should have been scoped out with what's existing at the building totally, not just the automotive lab.
And again, I believe the district had to consider the amount of dollars that had been received to be able to do this work.
Okay, I just want to make sure that money is gonna be there also, you know, and it's not gonna be used for this or used for that. But when it's time to start building that cross, I'm just making sure that their money is still there.
So again, it all predates all of us who are in our roles now.
Okay,
And we are just, we problem solve to ensure that, again, our students will have access to a manufacturing lab so they can do their hands-on.
okay.
Thank you, Ms. Downer. Dr. Joyner?
Well, first of all, it doesn't predate me. I know exactly what happened. And I'm gonna tell you what happened. When they did it, they made all the mistakes that Ms. Downer indicated. They did not do a great analysis to see whether the situation at Cross and the situation at Hill House was analogous and that you could just put something in there. These are buildings with their own distinct architecture and also various programs. In order to do it at Cross, you would have to rob Peter to pay Paul. And since there are millions of cars on the road, I don't see why anybody would want to take automotives out of any high school. The Hill House project is behind schedule, and I'm voting for it because I've been working with parents and grandparents and teachers over there. They have been made promises, not by this superintendent, not by Dr. Tracy, but by the person in charge of the project. And those promises were never met. So I'm voting yes on this to get Hill House rolling. And then we'll have to decide in the future what happens at Cross. But in order to put the program at Cross, you would have to rob Peter to pay Paul. And of course, we've been doing that for a long time because of being underfunded as a school district. And when you rob Peter to pay Paul, all 12 disciples suffer. So I'm voting for this to get Hill House on the road, and then we'll deal with other issues as time goes on. And hopefully, if we make promises and commitment to people, the people that work under the superintendent will honor those, or at least explain to us why they cannot. So I'm voting for this.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote on FNO item 10.01. Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough,
Yes.
Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Ms. Downer,
Yes.
Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
and I am a yes as well. And so that item passes. Mr. Wilcox?
Yes, now I move that we approve the 2 abstracts, the 32 agreements, the 1 amendment, the 2 purchase orders, and the remaining 2 contracts as recommended by the Finance and Operations Committee.
I second.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox and Dr. Yarborough. Any discussion? Dr. Joyner?
No, my hand's down. Oh, yes.
It's still
Yes.
up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. Okay, seeing no further discussion, we'll vote on the remaining F and O items. Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough,
Yes.
Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Ms. Downer,
Yes.
Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. And so those items pass. And so we'll move on to the reports. Students are not in, so we'll skip those. Superintendent's report, Dr. Negron.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Today I am going to be joined by our Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment. And we're bringing forward to you the outcomes from this year's high stakes assessments. I am happy to share that we have seen some growth across the data that you're going to see today. Again, there's still a long way to go, but at least we are trending in the right direction. As you know, one of my priorities last year was literacy. So, and you've also already seen, and we've been discussing the path to excellence, where we're also highlighting the outcomes that we want to see related to growth as it relates to literacy. So again, Assistant Superintendent Red Hannans is going to be walking you through the presentation. We ask that you give us a chance to go through all the outcomes, so then we can open it up for discussion at the end.
Good evening, board, and thank you for the opportunity to come before you. Dr. White will be showing the slides shortly, but I know you have them as well. So as Dr. Negron noted, part of our path to excellence, one of our priority areas is teaching and learning. And so this presentation will focus on that particular priority area. We know that we established our major goals. Dr. White, you all set? Or you need me? Okay. Slide 3. And so that right there. All right. So we know we established our major goals that we want to achieve by 2029. And those goals, and I highlighted 3 particular goals because that's what this presentation will address. One, on the left side, we see literacy, average percentage of growth target achieved, 70.1%. And we'll unwrap that a little as I go through the presentation. We also see on the right side, the complementary pair I'll go to first. In mathematics, 71% average percentage of growth target achieved. And then we also see for our LOS links literacy and oral tests, that we also have average percent growth target achieved 85% for LOS links. And we'll talk about that. As Dr. Negron noted, and as I'm about to go into discussing our data, we are not where we want to be. We recognize that, we will name that, and we will say that anywhere in any room. We know we're not where we want to be. You will know overall proficiency levels remain low. And there's a significant gap that exists with our performance and the performance of the state. However, we are seeing growth over the last year, and the gap that between our overall growth and the growth of the state is basically non-existent. And so as we look at our overall yearly comparison, looking at, and I'll say level 3 and 4 on the SBA, that's equivalent to proficient and above. So with level 3 being proficient, level 4 being above. This is a snapshot. This slide shows you that in ELA, if you look on the left side, and you look at the bars, yellow and green, you'll see over last year a 1.3% increase. For mathematics, you'll see a 0.9% increase. And for science, you'll see a 0.8% increase. So we have increases in all ELA, math, and science, but as stated earlier, performance levels are low. But let's look at our increases and look at each ELA, math, and science separately. And how does it relate to the state? And so once again, this chart just shows you overall 1.3% increase. We can see even if we step back to 21-22, we're about at the same performance level as in 21-22. When we look at the state, and the state is the yellow bar that's dotted, the yellow line, I'm sorry, that's dotted, you'll see the state increased by 0.4 percentage points last year, whereas we increased by 1.3 percentage points. So that's more than 3 times more of what the state increased in overall ELA achievement. When we look at individual grades as well as our demographic population, we see some highlights. We see in grade three, our students increased by 3.6 percentage points. I'm on the far right bars, and you can see the colors. We want to see green. We want to see green. We see a lot of green. We see a lot of like light yellow, which means that we're pretty much stagnant, and red is where we saw some decreases. We also see in grade 8, as our students are exiting us, and we know we have a focus on 9th grade coming in, our grade 8 students increased by 2.8 percentage points, as well as they have our highest overall achievement out of all the grades in grades 3 through 8. I would also note that our males are showing to 2.5% increase. Our African Americans, you see 2.4% increase, and our high needs populations, 1.6 percentage points. High needs is equivalent to ML, SPED, and free and reduced lunch. So they're all part of what is considered a high needs population. Now we'll talk about growth rate and average percentage of target achieved. So growth rate, and a lot of times people confuse the two. So I provided an example. So growth rate is the percentage of students meeting their growth target. So for example, if student A is in 5th grade and they're given a growth target of 77 points for the next year, we're expecting that student to increase by 77 points in grade 6. If student A increases his score by 70 points, he does not meet his target. It's just a simple yes or no. Do you meet the target or not, right? Doesn't take into a point of they came real close, they were really far. It's simply yes or no. Whereas student B has a growth target of 89 points, and they increased by 95 points. And it's still, yes, that student met his growth target. We don't know that it surpassed it by how much. It's just simply yes or no. And so that's growth target. Did the student meet their growth target for the year? Then we have what we call average percentage of target achieved. And what you need to know is that this particular target here is what we utilize in our path to excellence, our strategic operating plan. And the reason why is because it takes into account the growth that children make over time. And it takes into account more than simply the yes or no, but we're actually looking to see, well, how much growth is a child making in a particular year? And the state likes this individual target as well. In many of the urban areas, we lobbied years back to include growth targets in our overall achievement ratings. So this is the average percentage of growth target that was achieved across all students. So for example, that same student we talked about, student A, needing to increase by 77 points, they were able to increase by 70 points. Well, now their average percent targeted achieved for that student is 90.1%, right? That tells you more about that student and their growth over time simply than more than a yes or no. And in student B, we look at that same student, their target was 89 points. They increased by 95 points. They met their growth target 106.7 percentage points. So we know they grew more than what the target was expecting. So that's average percent target achieved. And so when we look at growth rate and average percentage of target achieved, we can see, looking at the yellow and green bars on the far left side, for growth rate, we see an increase of 3.8 percentage points for our students in ELA on the SBA. And for average percentage of target achieved, we see an increase of 3.9 percentage points. So let's look at what does that mean with respect to the state. So we go to the next slide, you'll see the state, which is the lines, the yellow lines, the state increased on growth rate by 1.3 percentage points, whereas in New Haven, we increased by 3.8 percentage points. So almost 3 times more than the state. I will also note on this graph, which is increasingly important because we constantly talk about achieving where we were pre-pandemic levels. You can see the bar on the right in comparison to the bar on the left. The bar on the left is pre-pandemic, 2019, 2020. You can see our rate was 32.6%. Now we're currently at 33.1%. So we have achieved and surpassed our pandemic marker. If we look at average percentage target achieved, you can see that the state increased by 1.5 percentage points, New Haven by 3.9 percentage points. So more than twice the state in growth here. And also you will note, we also surpassed our pandemic marker as well, which was 55.2% in 2019-20, and now we're at 56%. As we break the ELA SBA down by our demographic groups, what I will point to of note up top on growth rate, look at high needs, 3.8 percentage marker for our students. Those are our MLs, those are our SPEDs, those are our students in free and reduced lunch. You see a lot of green on this page. And we're pleased with the growth, but we're not where we want to be. As I started earlier, with our path to excellence for growth rate, our target is 70.1%. I've come before you several times. We know we're not going to change this overnight. This is a multi-year project, but we see ourselves moving in the right direction here. The next chart is with respect to the ELA SAT achievement. So SAT is given in grade 11. What you see on the SAT is an 8.5 percentage increase. So you see an increase of 8.5 percentage points from 26.8 to 35.3%. And we surpassed the pre-pandemic. And I apologize, the other chart should have had 2018-19 on them, not 19-20 on the pre-pandemic. And so as we look at this chart, you can see our growth is 8.5 percentage points, whereas the state 2.4 percentage points. So we definitely more than 3 times more than the state as far as our growth on the SAT ELA. And so now I'll move to mathematics. For mathematics, you'll see an increase. We have a steady increase from 21-22 to 22-23 to 23-24. Our increase last year was 0.9 percentage points, 0.9 percentage points. When we look at the state was able to increase 1.6 percentage points to our 0.9 percentage points. So you see the gap slightly increase between our overall performance and the state. When we look overall at SBA performance, you see a lot of greens, you see a lot of the lime color mixed with yellow for our students' performance. That shows that we're pretty stagnant in mathematics. We see some increase, the 0.9 percentage point, but overall year to year about pretty stagnant. And we'll talk about next steps at the end of the presentation. I just put this as a marker, as a reminder for growth rate and average percent target achieved. Growth rate, do we make it or not? Yes or no? Average percent target achieved, the percentage increase that a student shows from one year to the next. And as we look at our growth rate on the left-hand side, you can see we remained about stagnant, negative 0.7% for growth rate and negative 0.6% for average percent target achieved. And so we recognize definitely we have to look at the work there. But when we look at the state, we see that the state remains stagnant. So we're just about in line with the state, but we want to do more than what the state is doing. We want to surpass them in our growth. And so we decreased 0.7%. State remains stagnant on growth rate. Average percent target achieved, we're about the same. The state decreased negative 0.4%, whereas we decreased negative 0.6%. We have it broken down to us by our demographic groups. You see far more yellow here, which represents the fact that we were basically stagnant overall in mathematics. When we look at our SAT achievement, we can also see a dip of negative 0.7%. How does this perform in relation to the state? The state took a dip of negative 4.6%. So our dip wasn't as significant in the SAT, but still you see very low proficiency scores. And I will just add, not just for New Haven, but for the state as well, when we look at SAT overall achievement. And now we'll move on to science. Science, similar to mathematics, you see a steady climb with the red, yellow, and green bars. Our overall increase is 0.08%. With respect to the state, you can see the state remains stagnant at 48.5% in 22-23 and 48.5 in 23.4. So we have a slight increase, 0.08% for New Haven. Overall, for science achievement, what I would point out here, look at our SPED students. Our SPED students saw the greatest increase of 2.6%. I would directly tie that to the hands-on learning experiences that students are receiving in special education, in science. Finally, we'll look at our lost link status. For those not familiar with lost links, it's a test that is given to students to access language proficiency, language acquisition and their proficiency skills in literacy and oral, all right? And so then there's a combined score when you put both the literacy component and the oral component together for an overall score for lost links. So if we look at the left side, we'll see from yellow to green a 1.2% increase. So 1.2% increase in literacy. For oral, negative 0.6% decrease, and then overall a 1% increase. So we'll look at how those numbers compare to the states. The first is oral. As you look at the oral achievement and you look at the state, the yellow dotted line, you'll see the state increased by 0.7 percentage points overall. New Haven, we increased by 1 percentage point. And remember, that's a combined score, literacy and oral. When we look at the literacy achievement, we increased 1.2 percentage points, and the state increased 0.9 percentage points. So roughly about the same. As we look at oral achievement, the state decreased 0.2 percentage points, whereas we decreased by 0.6 percentage points. I will also go over the growth rate and the average percent target achieved for lost links as well. So as we look at literacy, you can see Our students grew by 4.1 percentage points on the Lost Links literacy. On oral, negative 1.5 percentage points, we decrease. And as we look at the gap and the increases for the state, we can see the state increased by 3.1 percentage points, where we increased by 4.1 percentage points, basically negating the gap that exists on literacy growth, on the literacy growth rate with the state. As we look at oral, we can see we decreased by 1.5 percentage points last year, and the state decreased by 1 percentage points. So the gap, we weren't able to close much on the oral component. When we look at average percent of growth target achieved, we were able to increase by 4.6 percentage points, and we decreased by 0.7 percentage points in oral. As we look at those numbers in comparison to the state increased by 3.6 percentage points. We increased by 4.6 percentage points, and the gap is closed. And finally, as we look at oral, average percent target achieved, the state decreased by negative 0.9 percentage points. We decreased by negative 0.7 percentage points. Our next steps, I'll just highlight a few for you. As the team, we've digested, we went through, we're still combing through data, looking at our assessment results. We're going to continue the implementation of literacy leadership teams in the remaining 15 schools. We're implementing a new curriculum into literature in grades 6 to 8, and we're reviewing and revising the scope and sequence of English 9 and English 10. In mathematics, the math supervisors convening high school lead teachers to begin curriculum review and revision. There's also a heavy focus on algebraic thinking, utilizing the data-wise process, and we're going to continue to share best practices through videotape lessons. In science, you see a lot of reviewing and revising pacing guides because we're looking at what's actually happened with the students. That's where we believe the magic happens. And so we're doing that in collaboration with our teachers as we look at our pacing guides and our scope and sequences. We are also ensuring materials and experimental activities are aligned to national standards. For our multilingual learners, we're refining the continuum of services for multilingual learners across the district. That presentation will come in teaching and learning in October. And there's also a presentation going to our administrators this week. And learning walks will also be conducted and feedback provided to our school teams. As I conclude, I would like to express my heartfelt thank you to the supervisors, principals, teachers, paras, and staff. The results that you see before us is because of their hard work. And dedication and commitment that I've witnessed going from classroom to classroom and in our schools. And they should be commended for the work they do. They take the armor every day, they put it on, they battle, and they know we have a challenge ahead of us. But we're going to keep doing this collaboratively to meet our goals for the path to excellence. So thank you for the time to present this evening.
So again, board, I want to reiterate again our gratitude to the entire staff, because this has been a collective effort. But this is again to ensure you that we have a team that is committed to student outcomes, because we know that is the only way that they're going to be able to have brighter futures when they leave us. So as I indicated at the beginning, we're pleased with the direction in which we are going, but we're also cognizant that there's a lot more work to do because we are not where we want to be. So with that, I think both Assistant Superintendent Red-Hannons and I open it up for questions.
Thank you for your presentation, Ms. Hannons, Red-Hannons.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments?
I have comments. If
Dr. Joyner?
one of the things I want to do is give a shout out to Dr. Tracy, because quite frankly, some of the momentum in this area was generated by the work that she was able to do under the curse of COVID. And I would say Ms. Keisha Red-Hannons, as well as all the subject supervisors. And Dr. Negron has come in and picked up the baton and started running with it. I think there's something we can learn from this. First of all, when we talk about literacy in this district, we need to talk about literacy within specific content areas. Scientific literacy, mathematical literacy, so on and so forth. We need to make that clear in our policies, because general literacy is not adequate enough for a student to excel in science and math. And we ought to be a district that make that very clear. General literacy can get you started, but as you begin to specialize in areas like genetics and library science, there's a special vocabulary you have to be conversant in. And we need to take a look at our policies to make sure they reflect that. The other thing is that we're not equivalent to any of the suburban districts, because in most of the suburban districts, kids don't go days and months without certified math and science teachers. And that's not to blame anybody here. That's not our fault. That's an issue that has to be addressed by the federal and state government, because that's a problem that's all over the world. If you look at what's going on in Australia and other places, they're also having problems there. So that's a policy issue for state and federal government. The other thing is that people have a tendency to say, well, we're doing better than the kids in East Cupcake. They're not equivalent groups. The kids at East Cupcake live in nice homes. They have family support. They have some enrichment programs that their parents pay for. And our district can on any given day have as many as 100 kids come in from different countries, not speaking English, and in some cases fleeing persecution and oppression. And so that ought to be made clear. Matt talks about fiscal support, and Matt, I praise you for that, because if you spend a nickel on one kid and $300,000 on another, you're going to get a different result, and that's real. And everybody in this city ought to be upset about that. And then, of course, volatility. Volatility is important because we don't have stable student cohort groups. On one day at Hill Central, you can have a class of 8th graders, and on 2 days later, that composition has changed, and there are 2 kids in there from Afghanistan, some from Central and South America, all needing a level of support that goes outside of the school. The comment that the teacher from Hill Central made about middle school, we need to seriously examine whether the K-8 system that we have in place now is in the best interest of the developmental needs of kids. I say it's not. And we need to look to a way to bring back middle schools so that we can focus on those kids, and so that we can have, and she mentioned ergonomics. And this is one of our best teachers, by the way. She taught my son, and that was a challenge. But she was a phenomenal teacher. Those schools are not ergonomically sound for kids that are as big as I am now. And it's also doesn't make sense to have 3rd graders and 4th graders in school where they see middle school kids on a regular basis. There are a lot of reasons for that, but I won't go into that. But when you consider what we're up against, I believe that our group has done a great job. We need to make sure there's equity in terms of resources for the different content area supervisors, so that we don't rob Peter to pay Paul. And we need to also help students and parents understand that we can offer the very best, and we do. We have the best education system in the state for kids who come to school every day, work hard, and take advantage of the multiple options that we have for students. Kids are much better off in this city because they can go to all kinds of magnet schools, all kinds of programs, and those are not existent in a lot of the suburban and suburban fringe schools. So it's a question of motivation on the part of students and parents that really is the final emphasis that must be taken into account when you look at student growth. The reason I say that because I went to 3 high school reunions this year. Hill House class of 74, class of 79, and I forgot the other one. chalk it up to my age. But all those kids that I remember that came to school, they were respectful, they work hard. They are engineers, they are lawyers, they're teachers, and that portrait of a student that we talk about, they really met those standards. And they didn't have as many resources back then as we do now. But we didn't have as many problems with getting certified teachers back then because there were more people interested in teaching. But I really believe that we should ask Dr. Tracy and Dr. Negron and the subject area people, the teachers, the president of the teachers union, administrators union, the entire village to take a bow. But remember that we have miles to go before we sleep. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner, Mr. Wilcox, and then Ms. Downer.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I know it represents a lot of work. It's always good to see these are snapshots in time of how things are going, rough indicators of progress and so on. And I know it doesn't represent the actual learning all the time of what's happening in a student's mind, but it is good to see this. I appreciate seeing the comparative with the state data. I do wonder, following up on some of Dr. Joyner's points about, because our students are above average in so many ways in terms of above average number of multilingual learners, above average amount of homeless students, above average amount of et cetera, that comparing to the state average can give an indication of where we seem like we can fall short. I wonder if it'd be interesting, maybe just with one of these areas, to see what it would look like when we compare against districts with large numbers of multilingual learners, for instance, on multilingual learner improvement, just to kind of get a little more granular on that. And then I also want to thank Dr. Joyner for teeing up a financial point that I wanted to make. As while I was sitting here, I just was wondering, when we're looking at the state average, what the state average funding per student is. And when I compare it to the state average funding of students for New Haven versus the state average in general, using the most recent Connecticut State Department of Education's district report cards, there is a roughly, because I'm doing math on my Apple Watch here, and so don't trust the numbers, run them yourself, but a roughly more than $600 difference between the New Haven, what we're able to spend on average per student, versus the state, which when you multiply that by the number of students in the district, that's between $11 and $12 million a year more, which would be here. And I can't help but think, if we wanted to move some of these numbers to increase student learning, to open up some of these areas, just what it would look like to put in another $11, $12 million into supports for these students, more math teachers, English teachers, coaches, paras, people to help that. And that's just one of those things that I think is something that's missed sometime when we're comparing. I can always see the comments that are going to be in the paper when this is reported that, New Haven can't do anything. Look how far below they are below the state average. And I'm just wondering, if you look at those numbers, I think it's a great story that we're seeing improvements. We're seeing greater improvements than the state average. And I do wonder just what it would mean if we did have that extra $11, $12 million for math teachers and English teachers, et cetera, to be able to address this. But I do appreciate the work of everybody involved on this, especially students too, because they're the ones that are actually learning and then doing these tests. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Ms. Downer?
Thank you, Ms. Red Hannons, for your report. I am a strong believer that operational effectiveness of how we deal with our operational budgets can affect our teaching and learning environment. A student's capacity to understand mathematical and literacy concepts and how they apply them and how they're applicable throughout their school year, through college, and entering into the workforce is very essential. As Dr. Joyner stated, the math that is being used in the school is totally different in the real world concepts. I wanted to thank all the teachers and the staff for their dedication, their passion that they have put in in spite of the conditions of the school. And assuring us, looking at the goals in the charts, that yes, there is progress. And we are on our way up. And to that, I thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Downer. Okay, seeing no further questions or comments, we move on to the next item. Does that conclude your report, Dr. Negron?
That completes my report.
Okay, thank you. I do not have a report at this time, so we'll move on to teaching and learning. Dr. Joyner? Dr. Joyner?
Ms. Red Hannons just gave our report. And I'm hoping that at the next meeting, we can have a report from Dina Natalino, which clearly illustrates all the wonderful things we offer our students and how hard we're trying to identify them and make sure they get what they need.
Okay,
So I don't have anything else to say.
thank you, Dr. Joyner. How about facilities naming committee report?
Nothing going here.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Head Start report, Mr. Wilcox.
This will be brief because we have not met since our last board meeting. Our next meeting is September 19th.
Okay, and citywide school building committee report?
Similarly, there's no report. Our next meeting is September 12th.
And finance and operations.
So in addition to going over all the action items, which we've previously looked at this evening, we also had an update around the FY24 minority and woman-owned contractor update. We had Ms. Snyder, the program manager for City of New Haven Small Business Development Program, come in and talk about that. We heard about the program and some of the work that she does. The district will be pulling together the data for the annual report on where that is in terms of how we are in terms of fitting with the goals of this small business development program that New Haven has. So we'll be having that on a future agenda item. We also had beginnings of the discussion around facilities funding gap. We heard from Mr. Carter and Mr. Aline about some of the challenges in the district in terms of funding. This is all towards trying to have a facilities funding gap report, similar to how we have our staffing guidelines, to try to put some numbers around how much do we really need for a district with a footprint of buildings this size and how much we can actually afford. Some of the examples that are included in the minutes of that meeting, we're talking around the number of plumbers that we have, where it was reported the district needs a minimum of 14 in-house trade staff for the entire district. We only have 11. Of the 11, 2 are on leave. So see, these are some of the challenges that are there in terms of just not having the funding for the amount that we need. And so we are also going to be continuing on with this as working towards a gap analysis. This will also include taking another look at security, which is included on our staffing guidelines report, but making sure that that is something that we're also taking a look at and being very aware of. Is yet another example in this crazy country of ours, the importance of school security, just in day to day, and then also in incredibly tragic circumstances. We do need to make sure that we're taking a look at that and being able to put a number on the amount of gap that we have there in terms of how many people we need in our buildings providing security. Finally, work continues on the procurement policy report, and I hope to have more to concrete information on that at our next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Questions or comments for Mr. Wilcox? Mayor Elicker and then Dr. Joyner?
Just real quick, I understand that earlier on in the meeting, it was referenced that there was issues at the cross track. I've checked with the engineer who said it was news to him. He checked with Eric Pachowski, who said that, I guess, Ms. Stockholm, who reported this earlier? Stockton's husband contacted the Board of Education on Friday night, Eric Pachowski. There's a small issue where grass sometimes comes up the track in the track, both at Bowen Fields and at Cross. Eric notified Parks Department this morning and they will address it. It's not a major issue. It's not some kind of abnormality with the contract, but now that we're aware of it, we'll address it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Elicker. Dr. Joyner?
Madam Chair, I just forgot to mention, it's a little off this, but D. Marshall was the teacher that spoke from Hill Central, and I should have mentioned that in my teaching and learning report. She's one of those teachers that we will have trouble trying to find to replace whenever she decides to retire. But she was the teacher that made those comments about we need more middle school, and she works with Nicole Brown, one of our great principals. I just thank you for giving me an opportunity to say that.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Ms. Downer? Did you have? Okay, that was a prior. Okay, seeing no further discussion, we'll move on to governance report. Dr. Benitez is out, but does anyone have her report to give, or?
I do.
You do? Ms. Downer?
So the governance team is asking that we put school policy for climate policy on for the first read. This is Connecticut school policy developed by CABE.
Okay.
For the first read. It's under Public Act 23-167. An act concerning the transparency and education around the climate policy. The next policy, there's two. So the next policy would be policy 5188. This is about the enrollment and handling non-resident school-aged students. And we are asking that it is in the minutes as the first read.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Downer. Questions or comments from Ms. Downer? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to the Food Service Task Group report. Dr. Yarborough?
Thank you. The task force met in a couple of topics that we spoke about. One, I appreciate Ms. Waters coming to raise the topic of the food allergy and its implementation plan. We have an updated food allergy plan, and its implementation is very important. So district staff have been working to make sure that our students, that they have the information to help our students to receive the appropriate meals during the school day. On the food, sustainable food initiative topic, there has been a pilot at 5 schools, and our school leaders are going to meet to see how the pilot has gone. And the food gap subgroup has been active as they always are, and this is a collaboration between community-based groups and our district and other partners. The most recent food gap was during the August break between the end of the summer programming of the district and the beginning of the academic year. And they had a food distribution on August 20th. So I look forward to reporting how that has gone. Importantly, there was an update to the strategy or the approach. There's partnership with Mr. Diaz and the Youth, Family, and Community Engagement Resource Center of the district to help reach out to families who could most benefit from food during the time. And so the previous attempts have been kind of flyers that go out and mass communication. But this particular group has been collecting data when people come to ask them how did they hear about this and where do they live and are their students a part of New Haven Public Schools. So this particular adjustment was a way to really try to serve our families who might be interested in receiving groceries. So I look forward to providing an update on what that team is doing. That concludes my reports.
Thank you, Dr. Yarborough. Questions or comments for Dr. Yarborough? Okay, seeing none, I will move that we go into executive session pursuant to Connecticut General Statutes 12006A and E for discussion concerning the performance and evaluation of a public employee Dr. Madeline Negron, Superintendent. And that would be the entire board, and we'll ask Dr. Negron to join us for the initial part of the executive session. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Downer. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote to go into executive session. Ms. Downer?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Wilcox?
Yes.
Dr. Joyner?
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough?
Yes.
Mayor Elicker?
Yes.
And I am a yes as well. So we'll see you in executive session. Okay, we are out of executive session, back in regular session. There were no votes in executive session. And so with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Third.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox and Dr. Yarborough and Dr. Joyner. Mr. Wilcox?
Yes.
Dr. Joyner?
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough?
Yes.
Ms. Downer?
Yes.
Mayor Elicker?
Yes.
And I am a yes as well. Good night, everyone.